Real quick before I go any further, folks, if you've not met the new KK on the channel, the new Teamster, please go back 1 or 2 videos and you'll see a small one we did for around 9 minutes where I introduce you to the new team member, a new KK. Look out for that one. So anyway, let's progress and get on with these 5 tax possibilities. Well, welcome back to the channel, people. Thanks for tuning in, as they used to say on old television channels. Again, this one's all about 5 tax possibilities. Now, what I mean by this is that we're already heavily taxed on the way we drive, on the fuel we use, and including EVs as well. We pay 20% VAT on public charges. Not a lot of people know that, but we'll come back to that maybe at a later time. You fossil fuel drivers, you get taxed heavily on fuel, and so we all pay tax. We all pay a VED road tax and all the rest of it. And so here's 5 tax possibilities that will happen or could happen within the next 5 to 10 years or even sooner. Now, the first one I'm going to mention is the leisure industry. Now, this is a big one because I was part of this for many years. I see this every single weekend and during the week as well, and this happens to be a bank holiday weekend, so it's rather busy. As you can see, that is just one field. I can pan you across there and you can see another one and load more behind there. There's about 20 units here today, mainly motorhomes and caravans, but a few tents. This is a massive market that is virtually untaxed. Well, here we are. Let me just explain before we go any further to my American and overseas viewers what a caravan is. A caravan is a form of RV in the UK. We've all called them caravans. They can be twin axle, single axle, and they're a way of staying home from home. Not normally winterized, mind you, normally seasonable, but that's the basics of a caravan. And still here you can see that we've got a few left scattered around. Not many, there's 1 or 2 also around this corner, which I won't show you. So the caravan market in the UK was massive up to about a decade ago, I'd say. Then it kind of fell down a slight cliff, to be honest. But then when COVID hit, it became the in thing to do again. No one wanted to fly anymore. No one wanted to go and be with people. So you had your own little home from home during and up to and even after COVID times. Well, the last 2 or 3 years has seen a drop off in caravans and the RV industry in the UK, and any caravan dealer will tell you that outright. There's been a 25% drop in new caravan sales and even bigger in the used sector because the market got flooded basically and prices were very high and false. So yeah, that's basically what caravan's all about. Now, the tax situation. Let's move on to this one. How could you tax a caravan? Very easy. And the government have actually looked at this before, and there's been plenty of forums speak about it, plenty of people panic about it, but it'd be a very easy thing to do because, let's face it here, folks, you could do this on a twin axle or a single axle caravan on the rating, because that's what it's all about. It's all about the weight, and it's all about what road effect it has, i.e. the tyres wearing away the tarmac, for example, as 1. 2, the space it takes up on the road. On these very busy roads now in the UK, and we've got more cars than we ever did. So that caravan takes up a massive big space when being used, but more so the weight and the wearable factor of the tarmac. Like I say, if you're going to do it on a single axle basis, you could say tax the thing for an extra £100 a year for you to be able to use it. Twin axles could go to £150 a year. Now, I'm pulling these figures out of the sky here just as examples, but it would be very easy to do. And I would say by looking across here, most are single axle. Now, even if you turned around and said, okay, well look, the seasonable one, they're only used 8 months of a year. Well, that's still no different. You're still using the road. You're still taking up a big space on that road when you're holding traffic up. I do believe that there is maybe a thing to look at there regarding caravan tax. Now, I know that some of you people are going, KK, shut up, you know nothing, you're being silly and all the rest of it, and you ardent caravan and RVers are going to be cursing me. I know that for sure. But this is just what I see. It's not my personal attribute to life to try and tax caravans, but very taxable things. Now the sun is just about to set here, folks. I'm just outside actually charging up the Tesla. So I thought I'd carry on with this one here now. Imports. Very close to my old heart and nostalgic side, which I'm not heavily into nostalgia, but let me tell you why. I used to import a fair few cars into the UK from the USA. These cars were not just for customers, these were for myself. I imported quite a number of American V8 Camaros, Mustangs, limousines, also travel trailers, and I have told this thing before on the channel, so my old subscribers will know where I'm coming from. My new subscribers will be maybe quite surprised. Now, with imports and tax, now I'm going to go back to when I was doing it on a regular. I'm going back a few years now, folks. Let's go back 20 years ago. Now the taxation system then, it's basically the same now, but just different figures. So I'm not going to go into the details and figures and what they are today, but let me give you an example how it used to be. And I know that inflation and everything else has took its toll, but this is how it used to be. If I was to bring back a, let's say, Chevy Camaro with a 6.2 V8 engine in it, and it was a, say, 2013 car, at that time the Camaro wasn't sold in the UK and was quite rare as a special order right-hand drive. So the one that was purchased in the UK, if you could get one through a General Motors dealership on special order, was more to tax than the import. So this brings me round to why I'm mentioning imports. Back in the day, every American left-hand drive imported car I owned, even if I didn't import it myself, I believe was £220 to tax. Then it went to £240, and I think the last one I ever had, which would have been the Mustang 5 litre GT left ducker full spec, the one that you've just seen here on this post, that I believe was £260 to tax. Now I'm going back 5 years ago when I had that, but that same car, if bought through a Ford dealer as a right-hand drive 5 litre GT Mustang, was nearly twice the cost to tax. You will pay less car VAD road tax than one that you will buy direct here as a UK spec vehicle. So imports, this is another one they could look at and very, very easily get some good money in, because if they did it, no matter what the age was, and did it on the engine size, wow, there's some money to be made there, folks. So be wary of that one, because again, this has been spoke about many, many times with classic cars, and even more so with the grey import side. The government has looked at and is still talking about a tyre tax. Now, we already pay a tyre tax, and that is every time you go to that dealer or that, you know, tyre place to have your tyres renewed, you are charged a disposal fee. So don't forget that. So there's one form of tax that's already happening. Now they could actually upgrade that from maybe the £5 per tyre or whatever it is to maybe even £15 per tyre. Nothing actually stopping them from doing that. And they would do that purely because they would see it as a polluting affair, getting rid of those tyres. So getting away from the disposal side of it, which obviously we know could be very, very easily taxed more, and there has been talk. The next thing that some governments around the world are thinking are the fact that the tyre dust created from any car, no mind if it's an EV or an ICE car, has to go somewhere. It's a wearable factor. So when it wears on the tarmac, it has to seep somewhere, just like oils do and transmission fluids and everything else from ICE cars. There's a lot of ICE cars out there going down the highway every single day with oil leaks. You know, my last two sons' cars have had oil leaks, and it's part of my drive, and after 10 minutes I've got a little pool like this of oil, so I know it happened. So imagine going along, you know, doing your 14,000 miles per year and a little tiny oil leak. That oil's got to go somewhere through the tarmac. Now I multiply that by millions of cars. Wow, horrific where that's actually going. It's going to end up in a watercourse. So they're thinking the same as with tyre wear and the dust particles that go somewhere, i.e. into the watercourses. Who knows? So this is going to be another tax on wearable factor. So forget what I've said about regarding the £15 or £5, whatever you pay to dispose of that tyre when you go. There could be also another tax regarding the dust factor and the pollution that they create. So be wary of that one, because again, this is something that's actually being spoke about now in a lot of government quarters behind closed doors. And I know us motorists, including ICE and EV motorists, have always been taxed far heavier than any other thing you can think of, because we are easy pickings. So tyre wear is an easy pickings, the dust, etc. from it. So yeah, that's part of this number 3, all to do with tyres. Okay, number 4. This is going to peer a lot of classic car owners off. And I do like to see the old classic. I do like to look at them, but I would never ever own one again. I can't see that ever. It doesn't interest me to put 5, 10, 15, 20, 40,000 into an old car I get out 6 times a year. But this brings me on to the twist. A lot of people now are actually buying 40-plus-year-old cars. Let's face it, 40 years from 2024 takes you back to 1984. So there were some decent cars. We were just about getting on top of making cars last a bit longer in the mid-80s. So there are some cars out there that you can actually get away with super low insurance because of classic car insurance, road tax, none at all, and of course, you know, no MOT needed for classic cars. Because a lot of people now are thinking, hold on, I could go out and buy an old oil burning car that's an 84 or before and pay nothing for it to run it. Because there's a lot of people out there who go out and buy a brand new car thinking that they're doing something for the environment, or a better petrol car, small petrol, got rid of the big diesel because they want to do something but they don't want to go electric yet, are still paying top tax, top insurance, MOT in it every single year after 3 years. I've got a feeling that could be an easy one to tax, and that is to tax all vehicles and make all vehicles have an MOT. Because let's face it, that MOT charge is basically a tax as well. It goes back to the government, so that is also a tax. Even if it's just a lower form of road tax, you know, after I think this tax changes April 25, and I think the lowest anyone will ever pay will be £180. But and I think that there is some changes that could happen there. Not from me personally, I don't run the government, but someone out there behind a closed door down in Westminster must be looking at that thinking, hold on a minute, this 40-year thing we've got is getting a bit too out of hand. And it would not surprise me if they come down hard on classic cars, or even make that 40 years now 60 years, so that it will, because like in the States, it has to be really classed as an antique, and they have to have separate plates and everything. Because after 60 years, you ain't going to run a 60-year-old car on a daily basis like you would a 40-year-old car. You ain't going to get the parts that easy for starters. And that's number 4 on what they could tax very easily, and that's classic cars. Okay, I'm going to move on to this next one. And again, it kind of travels along with older cars. A lot of YouTubers who believe that if you run a mid-90s car, it's cleaner and better to run for the environment than any new EV is. Well, what a load of bum that is. Because don't forget, that car was made somewhere. That car has had its same build, production, CO2 cost and emissions cost when it was built, just the same as this EV is I'm sitting in now. Now, they reckon that an EV takes a tiny bit more to build regarding what emissions you actually produce to build that vehicle. But now they're saying from day one, especially if you've got a car like this with no cobalt and nickel, it kind of like outlaws that, because from day one, I'm now not producing any more CO2 and any more pollutants, because I've done my bit when it did its bit when it was built over any ICE car, because that ICE car going along every single mile creates exhaust fumes. And the older that vehicle is, the more it produces. Let's just get that simply right from now. The older the vehicle, because normally got bigger engines and less emissions, creates more pollution. Because let's face it, I've done 20,000 on this Tesla now. That's 20,000 miles with 0 exhaust fumes, 0 toxic exhaust fumes. And the power that's gone into this has 90% been made from solar, wind, thermal and everything else, because that's who I pay to to provide my electricity. So it makes a nice car look pretty bad. Anyway, let's move on from that score. Tell me how a guy can run an old, very polluting car and only pay £30 a year tax. In fact, some of them are 0 rated. Some of the early diesels, some of the mid diesels, and some very small petrol engines were 0 rated. If not, it was £30 or £20 max that you paid VED, road tax. And I will tell you now that the government will realise that this is totally unfair. Now, as we go on in years, there's less and less older cars. Let's face it, the majority of them are falling by the wayside, and, you know, parts are going to get scarce and all the rest of it. And the expense of running an older car as well will certainly hit the pocket of a lot of people when fuel starts going up and up and up. And the electric car looks a lot more favourable. I used to work with a guy who had a Ford Fiesta diesel, and he always used to grab on about, I only pay £30 a year tax. What are you paying? And I could never ever see why he was only paying £30. And that was purely because at the time, it's the way the emissions were done. There is still too many old cars paying £30 road tax. 2010s, 2009s, this is the kind of car I'm talking about here. And again, I also work with a lady, bless her. Hello, Sue, if you're watching this, because she does watch my YouTube. She had a 2011 Vauxhall Astra. I got behind that thing and it stunk foul. Didn't see any big smoke coming from it. It was horrible. I was breathing that in every time, and used to be a nearly 2-mile road out of work off the quarry. That was just one car. Imagine being behind 40, 50, 60, 80, 1,000 cars on the motorway, puking out that same shite. And she was only paying £30 a year road tax. Well, I hope you enjoyed those 5. I picked 5 at random, to be honest with you. There are a few more I could have popped in. You may be thinking, well, hold on, he's not mentioned pay per mile. Well, that's a common one, and it's been spoke about for 10, 15, maybe even 20 years now in the auto industry, which I've been part of. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the 5. The only one that I really will support, and I hope they do, is the 0, 20 and £30 for old smoky diesels, which really shouldn't be happening now. And I believe that come next year, April, when electric cars have to pay £180, I'm hoping that these early takers of freebies or £30 end up having to pay the same. I can't see it. I think they'll just let them rot away into oblivion. But hey, that's the only one of the 5 that I would 100% support. The rest, well, who knows? Drop comments below if you want to, by all means. I'm intrigued to see what you think. You're probably thinking I've got a couple way wrong. But don't ever go at me. I'm just the carrier pigeon. I'm the message boy, and because behind the doors of Whitehall and Westminster is where it's all happening. So I've enjoyed it, and again, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're not. Always say this, where you've been, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.